Entertainment Partnership to showcase India at 75. As you know, the theme of this year's PBD convention is contributing to Atmanirbhar Bharat. For today's session, we have a set of panelists from across the world, but we have with us to deliver the keynote address the External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. S. Subramaniam. Jaishankar. Sorry. Dr. Jaishankar, please.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Friends, it's a great pleasure to join you all at this conference on forging media and entertainment partnerships to showcase India at 75. As you all know, this is being done in the run-up to Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. That again? Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Dear friends, it's a great pleasure to join you all at this conference on forging media and entertainment partnerships to showcase India at 75. As you all know, this is being done in the run-up to Pravasi Bharatiya Divas 2021. At the outset, let me state that instead of regarding this format as a compulsion of our times, we're probably better off embracing it as an outcome of a different era. So even as life becomes better, which I'm sure it will, such digital engagements may be pursued for their inherent value and efficiency. Now, Pravasis are, in a manner of speaking, our extended family. They live abroad, but remain deeply connected in heart and soul with us. As with family members, we take great pride in their achievements. And again, as we do with our near and dear, there is always a strong sense of responsibility towards their welfare. These sentiments were really tested this year due to the COVID pandemic. And the Modi government responded strongly, putting in place perhaps what has been the largest repatriation exercise in history. If about 3 million of our people came back to India through the Vande Bharat mission, we also facilitated the return of more than 100,000 foreign citizens back to their homes, and bear in mind, many of them were Pravasi too. The machinery of the state was pressed fully into service, whether it was Air India, our armed forces, our embassies and consulates abroad, or indeed the government at home. Our reputation as the pharmacy of the world may have been enhanced by providing medicines to more than 150 countries, but the goodwill that it created, one of great value to our Pravasis, was even more. My message today is a simple one. In times of trouble, we stand with our people, do what it takes for their welfare, and this government will deliver on its positions and promises. This is the attitude and capability with which we approach the Pravasi world as we near India at 75. Since this conference is focused on the media, allow me to also dwell on the importance of the image of India abroad. We have long recognized that Pravasis have played a role in influencing how the world perceives us. Their individual and collective accomplishments are taken as our national traits abroad. In many ways, they interpret and explain what really happens in their motherland. And that is why it is particularly important that all of us, those living in India and those abroad, pay attention to the media projection of key national developments. The COVID experience itself is instructive in that regard. As we near the end of the year, there is actually greater recognition of our rapid health infrastructure development, of our high recovery rates, and of our low case fatality rates. We also know from recent political outcomes that the people at large, in fact, repose even higher trust in the government today than they did before. But if we are honest, let us also remember that there were scaremongering efforts and distorted pictures presented that sought to lower our national morale. On the ground, the delivery of financial and material assistance to the most vulnerable was actually done on a remarkable scale. And yet, it was a story less than fairly captured when it came to the media abroad. Yes, in the end, the truth will always come out, but a more effective and accurate projection of our policies and record is clearly a pressing need. These concerns, in many ways, precede the pandemic and I have no doubt will probably continue after. The truth is that India has undergone a very significant transformation in the last 6 years or so. We've had a range of people's campaigns that have addressed long-standing challenges of gender gaps, digital gap, cleanliness, innovation, and skills, etc. These have been paralleled by innovative schemes of financial and socio-economic inclusion, many of them on a scale, again, without equal in history. Reforms have also been undertaken on a broad canvas touching many domains of activity. Those in education, labor, and agriculture are only the most recent in that regard. Making it easier to do business has created the basis for greater employment generation. We have seen other bold steps in governance and administration that actually seek to tackle issues left over by history. Together, these changes have the potential of enabling India to develop the strengths and capabilities that should naturally accompany the growth of its economy. The external manifestation of these changes has been in more intensive cooperation in both the immediate and the extended neighborhood, as well as in broader partnerships with major global power centers. India has emerged as a first responder in its near vicinity on humanitarian assistance and disaster relief situations. Its voice in international councils is more effective as its ability to shape outcomes in major negotiations such as climate change. The supply of medicines during COVID and the expectations of India on the vaccine front tell their own story. These are the outlines of the India that will emerge at 75. And getting that narrative across objectively to the rest of the world is a goal where the diaspora partnership can make a real difference. The perception of a country in the international community is also shaped by its cultural and behavioral attributes. We use the term soft power to describe the attractive personality traits of societies. When it comes to India, there are a range of domains that contribute to our national image abroad. Few would question the assertion that entertainment ranks high in that list. For decades now, the world has appreciated our visual, creative, and performing arts. Today, our traditions and cuisine are even more widely prevalent. By its very nature, these are spheres that are people-centric and people-driven. The government can certainly make a contribution through encouragement, facilitation, and even support. But our very strength is derived from the view that these are all genuine expressions of societal urges and creativity. And indeed, it is our civilizational heritage in their contemporary manifestation that will define us most sharply. A multipolar world is inevitably headed for cultural rebalancing, as it has for economic and political ones. That is taking place even as we speak, often in forms that we don't always recognize. Taking that further is not just a national objective, but an intrinsic aspect of creating a more democratic and pluralistic world. This is the global context in which we need to discuss today forging media and entertainment partnerships. I'm confident that our success in doing so will help showcase better India at 75. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your very comprehensive overview of the developments that are taking place in our country, the remarkable transformations, the way we fit into the global scenario, and most importantly, the deep connect that we share with our diaspora. Today, sir, we have a panel of 6 eminent media persons from the UK, Sri Lanka, Singapore, Australia, Oman, and South Africa. And I'm sure that through our embassies and high commissions, many more are connected to this PBD conference today. May I now invite Mr. Manoj Ladwa, who is the founder and chief executive of India Inc. Group, which is headquartered in London as a media organization and publishes India's foremost trade and investment magazine called India Global Business. Mr. Ladwa is an accomplished media commentator and also writes a popular weekly blog, Globally Speaking. Mr. Ladwa, may I invite you to make your comments to the panel?
Namaste, and thank you very much to my dear friend Ambassador Bhattacharya, Your Excellency, Dr. Jaishankar, eminent ambassadors and people that are watching this from across the world. The topic that has been chosen is both timely and extremely important as we move towards celebrating, acknowledging India's at 75. And Dr. Jaishankar is already, in his very lucid style and manner, has raised many of the key and pertinent points for deliberation. I'd like to put forward some context first, and then some suggestions of how we can take this narrative forward. Friends, there are 2 major globalization stories unfolding in these times, both of which are emanating from the East and are challenging ideas of what a stable and flourishing global order should and could look like. What's fascinating and has interested me and my colleagues at India Inc. Group is how India's globalization story is being driven by its people and its business. Dare I say it, rather than by state diktat. Within the next decade and a half, in this very short space of time, these drivers of growth, our people and our businesses, will result in India emerging as the 3rd largest economy in the world. It will contribute to a staggering 25% of the global workforce, our demographic dividend. And it has a diaspora with the largest and deepest global footprint of any country anywhere in the world. Yet, despite such a compelling narrative of unfolding before us, and such a clear and indeed lucrative addressable audience, we're yet to see a global media platform of scale, of reach, and global acceptability that informs world affairs from an Indian perspective. That is something that has troubled me over several years now. And some basic questions and poignant questions have come to mind. Why is it that we, as Indians in India and around the world, get exercised by a front cover piece of a US business magazine about matters in India, yet the US establishment will not bat an eyelid at an Indian magazine front cover on, say, the US presidential elections? Why is it that we as Indians tend to be exercised by a TV report from a Western media house on the state of India's economy, which receives huge second-hand coverage in India? And I underline second-hand coverage in India. Yet there is little coverage of Indian analysis of, say, Brexit. Are Indian companies and the diaspora here in the UK not significant stakeholders who have consistently been the top 3 foreign direct investors in the UK and are the largest employers in the UK's manufacturing sector? We are not detached, friends. We are not bystanders in unfolding global affairs. We are part and parcel of the unfolding of events that happen around the world. And more so, we stand to lose as well as significantly gain if we are able to present very clear perspectives on what our views and thoughts are. Over the past few years, my team and I at India Inc. have pursued a course in addressing what, friends, I call the India perspective deficit in global conversations. Yes, there are global events that happen throughout the year that many of us attend. Yet, we tend to try and squeeze in an India perspective. Yet, are we building global institutions, global platforms, and global convening events where the rest and the best of the world meets the rest and the best of India? That, friends, as we approach India at 75, is the challenge before us. And so, in a humble way, and I will just share this with you, we at India Inc., being headquartered here in London, have built out a multimedia, multi-platform, and multi-country organization, which focuses precisely on narrating India's perspective on global affairs through the eyes and journeys of our growth engines, our people, and our businesses. But in building this, there are 2 or 3 principles on which we as a media organization have worked on. Firstly, is that we're not in the business of accusing one bias against another bias. We're here to present a perspective. We will never win the battle on who is biased and who is not biased. The challenge before us and what we have set out to do is to constantly, consistently, and clearly put out India perspectives. Secondly, is that there is a false dichotomy that I often find in conversations about addressing the media, dealing with the media. And that dichotomy is that there is a social media and there is a mainstream media. There is also a dichotomy, which I think is a false dichotomy, between India media and global media. Social media and mainstream media today is one and the same thing. We are equally as informed by a tweet by our Excellency, the Foreign External Affairs Minister, as we are by a news interview. Likewise, what Indian media portrays about India in India does inform global narratives as well, and vice versa. The issue that we at India Inc. are trying to address is that of balance, of perspective, and providing a narrative that is more rounded than what we're normally seeing. And therefore, finally, before I end my submissions, I think that there are 3 tangible things that we should work on between now and India at 75. One is that there are a plethora of diaspora media organizations around the world. Yet there is no network that brings these diaspora media organizations together. Perhaps once a year, perhaps through a series of programs that helps to build camaraderie, that helps to build better understanding and perspectives on issues, and more so creates economies of scale, if you don't mind me using that phrase, where we can share both know-how, but also share content and information across a much wider geography. Secondly, is that there is a need for better information to flow from India to these diaspora organizations. Not only the excellent notes that I am now seeing from the Ministry of External Affairs, but in addition to that, please send across and put forward voices, young voices, diverse voices in New India that can be interviewed, that can present comment, not only on platforms like India Inc., much more better, but in platforms around the world as well. And finally, when it comes to the point that I made earlier about why do we not have a global media platform that speaks for India, that gives a perspective on India, I do not believe that this is the sole responsibility of the government of India. This has to be a collective and collaborative approach between both government and also the private sector. And therefore, involving the private sector and involving media professionals and organizations, some of whom are best in class and some of the best faces in their respective global media organizations, to input into the new journey of India post-75. That, I believe, is very important, that we must source better talent to help strengthen the vibrancy of debate and discussion that gives an India perspective. So with those words, I once again thank you for your very kind invitation to me to address this august audience, and I look forward to the conversation that will follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ladwa, for your very insightful and perceptive overview of how you see us celebrating India at 75 and how you link about conveying the narrative and how to create the perspective or the India perspective, as you say. You also mentioned about the emergence of India as a global power and how the story is driven by people and business. And you also mentioned how we are yet to have a global media establishment and our fetish, if I may use the word, for Western coverage, and how we need to create our own perspectives, and your very thoughtful suggestions on how the diaspora media can be brought together. Thank you, Mr. Ladwa, for your comments. We now move to Sri Lanka. Mr. Shivakumar Nadesan is the Managing Director of the Express newspapers of Ceylon, which owns the oldest and largest circulating Tamil newspaper, Veerakesari, in Sri Lanka, as well as several other Tamil newspapers. They also run English newspapers, the Daily Express and the Weekend Express. Mr. Nadesan is also the chairperson of the Sri Lanka Press Institute and is currently serving as the president of GOPIO, the Global Organization of People of Indian Origin. This is an organization that had extended significant financial help for stranded Indians in Sri Lanka during the recent COVID lockdown. Mr. Nadesan, we welcome you to this panel for your comments.
I presume you can hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you. Your Excellency, Mr. Jayashankar, ambassadors, high commissioners, members of the diplomatic corps, members of PBD, good evening, and I'm very happy to be here with you today sharing my thoughts on forging media and entertainment partnerships. If I go back, we are here to commemorate the return of Mahatma Gandhi from South Africa at the 16th PBD Conference on the 9th of January, 2021. But let me give you a little bit of history, because without history and without a base, there is no future. You need to look back to go forward. To recall, the Indian subcontinent was under British rule from 1857 to 1947, when the East India Company took control of Bengal and gradually expanded its territory over other parts of India. In 1958, the British government replaced the role of the East India Company, making the Indian subcontinent one of its colonies. It was almost 200 years later that India was able to attain independence. On 15th August 1947, Jawaharlal Nehru, as the first Prime Minister of India, raised the Indian national flag above Lahori Gate of the Red Fort in Delhi. Earlier, at the 1929 Lahore session of the Indian National Congress, it was promulgated that 26th of January would be declared as Independence Day. This thus commenced the civil obedience movement. In February 1947, the British government announced that they would grant full self-governance to British India by June 1948. However, the new Viceroy, Lord Mountbatten, advanced the day of transfer of power and chose the second anniversary of the Japanese surrender in World War II, i.e. 15th August as the date of power transfer. Thereafter, the Dominion of India became an independent country. Jawaharlal Nehru assumed office of the first Prime Minister, and Viceroy Lord Mountbatten continued as the first Governor General. President Rajendra Prasad chaired the fifth session of the Constituent Assembly of India, which met on the 14th of August. It was here that Jawaharlal Nehru delivered his memorable speech on the tryst with destiny, proclaiming India's independence. He said, and I quote, "Long years ago we made a tryst with destiny, and more the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge, not wholly or in full measure, but very substantially. At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awaken to life and freedom." Since then, India has progressed much. It has sent satellites into space, has one of the world's best railway systems, and is a leader and innovator in information technology. Its textile industry ranks as one of the best in the world, and people of Indian origin have reached positions of great eminence as presidents, governor-generals, scientists, and achievers across the world. Recently, Indian actresses have also become Hollywood stars. This is what independent India has done and what Nehru predicted in his famous speech. A moment comes, which comes but rarely in history, when we step forward from the old to the new, when an age ends and when the soul of a nation, long suppressed, finds utterance. India has since then found utterance. I'm not going to enumerate the achievements in any great detail, but as people of Indian origin, there is surely a feeling of pride when we relate to India, the land of our ancestors. This session, I believe, should clarify the purpose of our meeting today. The topic is forging media and entertainment partnerships to showcase India at 75. We have less than 2 years before India celebrates 75 years of independence. The government of India has already commenced working on the various areas of social development and industrial growth, but the COVID-19 virus must have been a great barrier to achievements. Plus, the impact of the virus was never really imagined, nor were we prepared for its consequences. The audience of this session are essentially participants of the PBD Conference in January 2021. Consequently, the partnership we need to forge must be inclusive, since the participation of all NRI and PIO is a partnership of all stakeholders. COVID-19 has changed the media industry as well as the entertainment industry. Media is bringing us valuable information, while the usually vibrant entertainment industry has to find new avenues of access to its audience. Fortunately, both industries have been innovative, and in some ways, the impact of this deadly virus has brought images right into our living rooms. Let me quote an extract from the publication of the Confederation of Indian Industry, CII. In the wake of the current COVID-19 pandemic, especially during the lockdown, there has been increased adoption of teleworking, telemedicine, and online education. This could result in a sudden upsurge in the network traffic, which could only be fulfilled by a robust supporting infrastructure, increased internet penetration, the transition of telecom service providers for providing 4G services, and eventually migration to the fifth generation network 5G, presents a demand for supporting infrastructure. The developed world has already experienced a digital revolution, and the diaspora has no limitation to access. So now the question in my mind is, what should be the goal on these two platforms, separately or by merging both platforms? We have been told that the goal is to showcase India at 75. I believe that we should identify our audience, certainly not forgetting our next generation. They are extensions of ourselves, and we should never let them forget our culture or our roots. The history of India needs to be remembered and reinstated, while the achievements visually promoted to ensure that we have pride in Indian development in all fields. We need to be mindful that any action or activity undertaken should always be with the population as beneficiaries. The time we have is enough to execute any plan we may develop, forging a partnership between media and entertainment. The future looks exciting, and the wonderful diaspora that has made great contribution to their host countries can most definitely showcase India at 75. Let's work together in that direction. I thank you for this opportunity to share my thoughts with you, Your Excellencies. Let me wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Happy holidays. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nadesan, for that fascinating account of the historical developments as well, and reminding us that this event and the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas actually go back to the return of Mahatma Gandhi when he came back from South Africa to India. Mr. Nadesan also referred to the remarkable achievements that have taken place in the years that have gone by and how it is now appropriate to showcase India at 75. He also said that it is useful and important to target the audience and to address the beneficiaries. And in this context, it would be very useful to remember and to restate the history and the culture. Thank you so much for your very wise comments, Mr. Nadesan. We look forward to your continued support to the cause of the Pravasis across the world, and particularly in this part of the world in South Asia. I'm now very pleased to move to Singapore and welcome Mr. K.V. Rao, who is the president of SIFAS, which is the Singaporean Indian Fine Arts Society. But Mr. Rao is actually much more diversified in his experience than just fine arts. He has worked in several industries and enterprises. He was also a member of the Singaporean Civil Service and has now specialized in international business, especially in developed and emerging markets. As a very senior corporate leader, Mr. Rao is currently the resident director for ASEAN for Tata Sons. Mr. Rao, welcome to the panel.
Thank you. Namaskar. His Excellency, very pleased to meet digitally Dr. Jaishankar. Thank you very much for this opportunity given to Singapore and to Singapore Indian Fine Arts Society. Ambassador Mr. Sanjay Bhattacharya, dignitaries, friends, it's a great opportunity for us to reflect and plan 2 years ahead of India 75 and actually converge our thinking, strategize, and make an impact in the globe that perhaps has never been made before. I would like to share a little bit about the institution that I represent today. Singapore Indian Fine Arts Society, called SIFAS for short, was established in the year 1949. So as India would celebrate 75 years, our institution will be celebrating 73 years in 2022. Over all of these years, the early Indians in Singapore created this wonderful platform and an institution that draws today over 2,000 students of all ages who are taught Indian classical music, dance, arts, and we promote this with over 200 shows in a year across the region, internationally, and in Singapore. It has 15 faculties, it has about 30 teachers, and it's been in existence for 7 decades. And we look forward to this great opportunity of participating meaningfully India at 75. I'd just like to step back and just share a couple of thoughts. I live in Asia, and if you look at the whole of Asia, which is Northeast Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia, the whole of that region, we are bound by a culture, a swathe of Indian culture that has actually dominated for more than a few thousand years, and over the last 500 to 600 years has become a part of the local cultures in the manner in which people live, in the manner in which people relate, and in the manner in which people enjoy even today. Because the most easy or the low-hanging fruit for people of all races is to actually experience Indian culture through Indian food, Indian art, Indian music, Bollywood, whether it is novels or literature. So I think it's all-embracing culture, and I would just spend a couple of minutes in terms of what we could be planning during the 75th year. I believe that culture brings hearts and minds together, and it delivers not just a brand India, but it delivers something far more meaningful and touching and feeling sort, which is called the Indianness. Your Indianness is established when you're able to establish your culture. And it does give me a cause to say that in 2022, I hope, after the first Nobel Prize for Asian culture, Asian literature was won by Rabindranath Tagore, I don't think we've got there. And I think in the 75th year, I hope we will be able to promote our literature, our music, our art, our dance, and along with that, all our material achievements to make it far more meaningful. So I would look at a little more closely what we could do on the culture side. It is about reviving and celebrating 75 years. I would talk about a target here, and I would say if you could take at least 10% of the world's population minus India, you're looking at 600 million people to be reached to experience what is Indianness during that particular year. I would talk about 600 million people in ASEAN. If you can take 10% of that, it's 60 million people being drawn into some form of a festival, program, art. And this is something that the diaspora, the Indian establishment, the government of India, and all of us together. And many arts institutions, many educational institutions, and also complementary institutions around the world from various governments will be very happy and willing to collaborate with us. I would like to talk about 4 areas in which we could actually structure some plans. Many of our friendly countries have cultural MOUs with India, whether it is with ICCR or the embassies. I think there's a lot that could be achieved on a G2G basis, because there's no country in the world that does not want or enjoy Indian culture, arts, music, and dance, and the vibrancy that India brings. And it could bring in global leaders to different locations around the world where we could talk about and present what India is. And alongside culture, we also present our material achievements and get media to cover that. There could be some very meaningful institutional partnerships with the government of India and the national institutions in India and the national bodies that promote culture around the world, so that it could be a network India for India at 75 that could drive a lot of these programs. The third area is over the 2 years, we could actually plan and create some programming, which will be a collaborative programming, which is actually a fusion of cultures, which have been adjacent to the Indian culture because it would give meaning to both sides. And our friendly countries and people would feel equally elated and happy to celebrate India at 75 with a bit of themselves coming into it in these programs. I think Asia is a great hub. And from Singapore, and on behalf of Singapore and Singapore Indian Fine Arts Society, we would be very willing to organize and work to make these events extremely memorable to the people and draw them both digitally and hopefully by 2022 physically too. There's one aspect that I want to touch upon. India at 75 is not only celebrating of our past, but it's the beginning of the next 75 years. We all talk about the youth of India, the demographic dividend. What we need to also appreciate, the kind of skills that the young Indians are bringing today to the world is beyond IT, beyond technology, beyond healthcare, beyond medicine. Even in the field of arts, the phenomenal contribution of young Indians today is unmatchable. They bring classical arts to present them in the most appealing and modern way. And I think this platform should drive a whole lot of our young people to come and participate in the best of the art spaces around the world. We could create a whole series of programs. I would like to say there should be at least 75 festivals around the world, 75 major programs, and so on as multiplicative of the 75th year that could be achieved through all our networks that are present. And continuously, as I saw Manoj mentioning earlier, there could be a very strong digital platform on which a lot of this could ride. And through the whole year, 2022, we could create and make our presence felt. There could be in newspapers or in other media terms, a corner and a branding for India at 75 that becomes a very visible branding that can be felt and that can be participated upon by the people of the world. Most importantly, young people, what they achieve is breaking barriers and creating new vistas. And I think this part of culture, which could be highly multicultural, multilingual kind of assault, if I may, on Indian culture around the world, could make it very, very impactful. And with that, I'd like to thank the organizers the opportunity to me to share my views. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rao, for your very well-structured presentation on how you talked about the need to reflect and strategize on how we present India at 75, for outlining how the swathe of Asia to the Southeast Asia, North, there has been a very strong presence of the Indian culture over the last 2,000 years, and also outlining 4 specific ways in which this could be achieved through the MOUs that we have with various countries on cultural exchanges, on achieving networks with organizations and institutions, on collaborative programming, and finally, making use of the youth, because this is also a projection into the future, and how it is very important to have a mega presence and have brand India. Thank you, Mr. Rao, for your very well-structured and very, very meaningful suggestions on how we take this endeavor forward. We now move to the continent of Australia, and we have Ms. Rajni Gai Malhotra. Ms. Rajni Gai Malhotra is a very well-known media face, particularly in the diaspora affairs, as the editor for Desi Australia. She's also presenting on various ethnic media platforms that keeps the Indian diaspora connected through multiple media channels, such as the Desi Australia monthly magazine, newsletters, videos, and social media handles. Over the past few years, she has been working actively to represent the media at various multicultural community events in the country. Ms. Rajni Gai Malhotra, we look forward to your views to the panel.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here. I'll start off by giving my greetings to everyone, and especially to the Honorable Minister of External Affairs, Dr. Jaishankar. As the speaker before me said, it is a privilege to be here in audience with you, and also the distinguished guests and other panelists present today, and everyone else who's tuned in. Thank you. And talking about media and entertainment partnership to showcase India at 75, I don't think this could have come at a better time. This is just the perfect timing when we're planning, sitting in our different parts of the world, trying to think about brand India, as someone said before me. So when I talk about this topic, I am in the fortunate position of being able to summarize a bit about what the speakers before me have said. And the perspectives that I bring to this are not just of a media person and my media representation across Australia for our Indian cultural events and other stories, but also the fact that I've been a member of the diaspora for over 17 years now. Worked quite closely with the High Commission of Australia to reach out to the community with their various initiatives, and also a window to the youth and children, because I work extensively with them as a yoga teacher and with a bit of know-how about financial accounting, as I'm a public servant with the Australian government. So when I present, I've got a few slides now just to sort of attack this topic at a multi-pronged approach, and to present to everyone how we talk about India and what it's achieved until now, and like the speaker before me, also what India we want to see outside of India, that brand imaging, targeting the same diaspora, media, community groups who are our target audience, and the larger, wider community, but also then tapping into them as a source to further grow that brand India at 75. So if I can just pull up my slides, and if you'd like to have a watch. Just bear with. So that's us. That's India at 75. We're sitting here together to brainstorm ideas on forging media and entertainment partnerships. Once again, thank you for having me here. Now, this is another what I think an overlap of media and entertainment would be for us. So the four broad areas would be film and television, arts and culture, sports and health, and the digital world. And to make it really structured and easy for everyone to get on board with, I've got about 8 ideas on how we can promote this brand of the new India, which has come a long way since independence. We're looking at advancements not just in science, technology, and space, but also about re-establishing some ancient concepts of India at a global platform. So I'm starting with film and television, which again has been rightly observed, is something that grabs everyone's attention. And if we want to reach beyond the diaspora, if we want to reach the wider global community, what we want to do is maybe have a promotion video, India at 75, that we can then take forward into television. And that's it. With my slides that follow, we will come to how we can promote all of this. But these are my suggestions. So for film and television, we're talking about India at 75. Video, a short 1-minute clip. We're talking about maybe a collaboration between Indian cinema, tapping into the resources in the country, and also then collaboration with film directors in the diaspora outside of the country to build a movie that showcases what India is and the picture of India that we want to give out to the world. And how we'll do this will be through the film festivals and art centers and theaters and universities across the globe. Coming to the next segment, which is arts and culture. There are a lot of events that are held across the world amongst the diaspora with the help of the missions. We observe all kinds of festivals. There are independent little festivals of India, which is meant to attract people with the food and arts that India has to offer. But if we could have maybe a larger celebration, which is at a global level, and we're talking something along the lines of Canada Day, or the way China celebrated their anniversary, every year they celebrate the Golden Week, which is a week-long celebration of their culture and their achievements. If we could have a global festival of India, which is maybe celebrated on one day across the world at a much larger scale, and where we present to the world not just our cuisine, not just our arts, but also, crafts, also an exhibition of our achievements as a nation, and have that festival open to the entire public, that would reach that message out to people. And along with that, I would like to talk about maybe an idea of a pictorial book. Again, the theme being India at 75. Another event that I think could be taken to a global level, where we launch the book. It's pictorial with stories, the great stories of India's achievement in the past, maybe a window into what India is hoping to achieve in the next few years. And that becomes a coffee table conversation starter, and really helps us get into maybe the academic circle. So we're thinking universities across the world. If the books are presented to state officials, there's wide scope on how we use that book. Later, it could be presented to school libraries and public libraries across the world. Coming on to sport and health, I think that's something that excites everyone, especially if I were to talk about the Australian perspective. Then cricket is a big thing. We've recently seen that. We've experienced the excitement of it despite the COVID restrictions. Maybe a cricket tournament between India and Australia, especially with the theme of India at 75. This could also include maybe other Commonwealth countries, depending on how big we want to make this. And then, of course, there is bike and walking marathons with the idea to reach the wider community beyond the diaspora. There is a lot of emphasis on health and fitness, and walking marathons and cycling are something that are very popular in Australia, for sure. And my last point is about the digital world, which always has been a big aspect to bring. It's an overlap again that allows entertainment and media to join. But what I'm thinking is if we can use this to tap into the biggest resource that we have, which is the youth, if we can get them on board, because they will then spread the message of the new India. And for that, I think nothing the best would be India at 75 app. The scope and the reach of this app will, I think it's beyond our comprehension right now. If we just start to think about how we can use that as a platform to reach the message of an India that we want to project and get the youth on board, attract them with games, attract them with fun facts about the country. There are so many Indians who are not aware of simple things. For instance, that in 2022, we plan to have the first man in space. So things like that, that would make the youth of especially the Indian diaspora, feel proud to have their roots back in India. And again, social media, which is already being used extensively, but can also just add to all of this. So moving on, and this is a bit of a graph on the scope and scale, both local and global. The 4 sections on your left: film and television, sport, arts, and the digital world. Again, my ideas on the movie, the video, cricket match, marathon, Festival of India, a book launch, and the app. And then how each of these will expand, or how we get to reach, what kind of sectors we can reach through these ideas. There's a little graph in the right column, for ease of understanding, but that's how I perceive these ideas will reach and spread the message of India at 75. And the list is extensive. For want of space, I've had to cut down on the areas of our community or the demographics, but state officials, government officials, the friends of the nation, everyone and anyone can be included in these projects. So if we were to talk in particular about Australia, I would draw your attention to the current Indian-Australian events, such as the Indian Film Festival at Melbourne. I'm trying to tie up all the ideas that I have listed and how we can now promote them and flush them into the minds of the people. So we've got the film festivals, we've got an Indian Mela, we've got the National Multicultural Festival in Canberra, and the assortment of little events that are organized across the country where we already have a presence. But the image of new India, or India at 75, can be projected at all of these events with a conscious, concerted effort. But we can also think about entering a domain that we haven't yet, which would be very Australian events, which cater to the Australian public, which are the Royal Canberra Show or the Floriade. It's a flower festival. We've got Vivid Sydney, which basically lights up the iconic landmarks in Sydney, a similar one in Canberra called Enlighten. And then the other international film festivals at Brisbane and Gold Coast. What this would involve is partnerships. So partnerships, if you refer to the last column on the right, if we were to make a film, tap into the celebrities, the Indian cinema celebrities, tie up with directors in India and in Australia, and then approach local film distributors and cinemas and universities. So just to make it bigger than what it is now. This is quite self-explanatory if you would like to have a look at that. And I've used double ticks mainly to emphasize where, so for instance, the promotional video would be promoted or flushed into the public through social media and television easily. It has more of acceptance if we were to approach the local TV networks for a short 30-second promotional video compared to asking them to maybe cover an Indian festival. But we are thinking one step ahead here. We are going beyond what's already being done and approaching universities and schools and theaters and cultural associations, which are not just Indian. And what one point worth noting would be the India at 75 app, so the bottom row, would eventually become a media source for us itself. So once we set that up, we've tapped into the youth, and we can also then use that to further promote that image, maybe keep an update section for people to go into it to know what celebration or what event is happening in which part of the world. How I think we can implement all of these ideas is using our Indian support groups. We've got the immense wealth in our diaspora. We've got the Indian community groups. Reach out to the student bodies, business community. And similarly, with the Australian side of things, we approach the local councils and state authorities, multicultural support groups as well. And this year, the reason why I'm here, role of media. Once again, so if you refer to the section in blue, that's the kind of coverage that's the extent of coverage we're thinking of expanding the New India image to, and how it's through flyers, posters, written promotional content, and stories of New India which come from India. In green is our digital and social media, and that's what is probably going to allow us maximum coverage. We can build on further video interviews and any kind of material, as someone observed before me, that comes from India and can be further flushed into the public. And of course, then there's use of print media. We could, as I could envisage this, maybe every monthly print or the digital magazine could have one section devoted to India at 75, so that we are reminding the public that that's what's coming and what we want to get to. And with that, I come to the end of my presentation. Thank you. And hopefully not a sudden end for the next speaker to pick up.
Thank you, Ms. Malhotra, for a very practical approach, a perspective of a diaspora member who lives and operates in a multicultural society. You talked about the importance of targeting. You also talked about how you have divided this particular package into 4 broad themes of film and TV, arts and culture, sports, very relevant today because we really need our diaspora to go and cheer up our boys on Boxing Day when the next test begins. And finally, in the digital world, and how you also, like Mr. Rao before you, emphasized the need to have the involvement of the youth in projecting the message of New India. Thank you very much for your comments for this particular panel. We now move to Oman. We have Mr. Rahul Das, a veteran journalist with 25 years of experience, extensively in India, and then he joined as the managing director of the Times, managing editor of the Times of Oman. He also runs their online version as well as the social media presence, and also manages their FM channel, TFM and Times TV. Mr. Rahul Das, the floor is yours.
Good day to viewers from all around the world. Greetings to His Excellency Mr. Jaishankar, members of the Indian Diplomatic Corporation, esteemed guests, and officials of the Indian government. I am honored to be selected for the conference. But before I begin, let me share a story with you. Sometime back, a survey found out that in 8 hours of workday, an average worker in Middle East is only productive for less than an hour. And the most popular unproductive activities included the use of social media and discussing non-related things with the co-workers. And here lies the secret of the expats in the Middle Eastern regions. Now, before I go on, I would like to have a presentation. Oh. This is the company where I work. It's the biggest and the oldest media publication of Oman, which has got radio, TV, online, everything. We also have Arabic newspapers, and our overall reach is about 3.5 million a day. When we talk about the media on the Gulf, you know, the Gulf consists of the 6 countries: Oman, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. Kuwait time is one of the oldest. I'll go through quickly so that, you know, none get bored. Indian journalists form the backbone of the papers, which includes Khalij Times, Gulf News, Saudi Gazette, Peninsula, Muscat Daily, Oman Observer. In UAE, we have got radio channels, which Indian languages play, so it's very, very popular. In Times of Oman editorial, we have got significant Indian presence. Okay, many special publications released in Indian languages for Indian diaspora, and there are about 8 million Indian nationals living in the 6 Gulf countries. Now, Oman India Social Economic Times, there are around 5 lakh Indians living in Oman. Indian publications and the media houses showcase the developments and the Indian community to the people back home. Oman is one of the, obviously, the closest strategic partners of the Gulf, and the bilateral trade reaches around 6 billion. Some Indian nationals have been granted Omani nationalities also, and Indians from the Kutch have set us the business about 600 years ago. So you can imagine the tie between Oman and India is for a long, long time. About 4,100 Indian businessmen enjoy a presence in the country with an estimated investment of over 7.5 billion. There's a short comparison between 1950s and 1922, which I have made. 1950s to 2022. So people can see, you know, how India has changed over the last 75 years. Everybody knows about how India and how it is great. From its architecture to its Bollywood to Indian food, textiles, everything. And this is about modern India. I don't have to tell anybody about how modern India is and how they have changed over the years. Now, the most important point here comes the media collaboration and how do we make this work? Okay, Indian media organization will have an interest in the NRIs and the Gulf and other parts of the world. Many India channels like Zee Aflam and all, they cater to the Arabic audiences. Collaboration with Gulf and Indian publications will surely benefit both the countries. Indian expats currently watch live streams of Indian channels over YouTube. If there is a channel we can set up between both the countries, that will help. Both Arabic and Indian and Arabic media will do well to provide more than mainstream, varied forms of news across the multiple channels. And the case example, the best media example can be Madhyamam, which publishes in 7 countries and 6 of them from the GCC. So how popular they are in Gulf. Bollywood, obviously, if we are targeting entertainment, it has to be Bollywood. Bollywood films release one day before they do in India. So that shows us the popularity of Bollywood films in the Gulf region. And whenever I go to a cinema hall, at least there will be 30 to 40% of the local population who comes and see Bollywood movies. And Bollywood award shows has been held here. Last year in 2019, Filmfare was held in Muscat. And Bollywood films like Bang Bang, Once Upon a Time was shot in Oman. Sorry, Bang Bang was shot in Dubai. Once Upon a Time in Mumbai was shot in Muscat. Because it's 2 to 3 hours flight, presence of the Indian media is also very strong. GCC countries are considered to be one of the safest in the world with friendly and welcoming hosts. Future measures. The basic support to generate more interest in media. We don't have any good media schools in the 6 GCC countries. So if a media school, which is very, very popular in India, can set up, we can have very good schooling system which can teach media in the GCC countries. The local institutes provides us classrooms which can also grow a long way in improving India's soft power in the region. Internship for media personnel and students in both the parts of the world can provide better understanding. Publishing house and news channels can come up with the editions, Gulf edition, to reach the Indian diaspora here, to build their audiences. For the films who are coming to the Gulf, there is a major drawback. Okay, they have to apply to so many places to get license, to clearance for their shoot. One is from the police, one they have to approach Ministry of Tourism, then they have to approach Ministry of Manpower, and so on. So if one window clearance is instituted, it will help everybody. Obviously, then faster processing of the visas, easier custom clearances, and shorter wait times at the airports are the need of the hour. This is another point we have to handle very well. Social media. Social media is too much powerful in the Gulf. I think we know by the couple of examples we have seen this year. We have to handle this fake news, confidently. And we have to thwart them away. How to do that? To engage youth on the social media, region-specific platforms we have to create so that, we can deliver what India is all about. To be very honest with you, I want to share one line with you. A lot of people have a different opinion about India because they think that India treats Hindus and Muslims separately. That shouldn't happen. India should portray in such a way that that division we have to stop. We have got ANI news feeds. It will be great if we can get Arabic news feeds, which can be published in the local media. And one more point, ability of Indian officials posted in the Gulf countries. If they can speak little Arabic, that will be great because a lot of places, the people here speak only Arabic. So once they know that they can't speak Arabic, they generally try to avoid those people. Last but not least, a thank you. I would like to make this as a point to commend the work done by the Ministry of External Affairs of the Indian government since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic in early 2020. Thanks to the Indian embassies and the missions worldwide who have lifted thousands of people from the Gulf. Okay, and not only they have airlifted people from the Gulf, they have also provided food and much needed relief to the millions of the Indians who unfortunately became jobless overnight. So thank you, sir. I want to salute everybody who were behind these missions. I know personally there were a lot of people who were behind these missions. Thank you, sir, once again. And before I finish, I want to say my gratitude to every one of you who have organized this meeting. Thank you.
Sir, please unmute.
Sir, can you unmute, please? We can't hear.
Sir, please unmute.
Sir, we can't hear you.
Sanjay ji, please unmute. We can't hear you.
Sir, we are not able to hear you.
Sanjay ji, I think you have been on mute.
Mr. Goyal, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Lovely. Mr. Goyal, the CEO of ZSL Group South Africa, is a veteran of the media and telecom industry. He has wide experience in media, telecom, infrastructure, health and wellness, consumer durables, and electronics, and he drives the corporate group's strategic discourse. Mr. Goyal, welcome to the panel. We look forward to your comments now.
Namaste, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak today. My views are influenced based on my practical experience of living in South Africa and working in media and entertainment business for last 7 years. Indian television and Bollywood has global appeal, and Africa is a continent full of opportunities in this space. And I would also say that, my practical experience has been, I've seen best of many worlds that the continent offers. Africa is a continent of 1 billion people, consisting of 54 countries, with South Africa as a jewel in the crown. We at Z Entertainment reach 173 countries across the globe, and we reach 1.3 billion viewers globally. I must say that Africa is not a wide brush continent. It's a fine brush continent wherein we have to realize as a media company or as any business, what works in South Africa may not necessarily work in Nigeria, and what works in Nigeria may not work in Kenya. I have seen a lot of success in the continent when products and partnerships are backed by research and focus group studies. One can, in media, if the products are launched backed by customization and backed by research, it does work very well. We at Z conducted multiple research studies across the continent, and every research had shown that there is a cultural resonance between India and South Africa, or between India and Africa as a continent itself. Be it dance, the love for dance in both the countries, or be it love for colors, love for music, or the cultural values wherein, like in India, elder siblings are expected to take care of younger siblings. I have seen the similar cultural values in South Africa. I have also seen the respect for elders that exists and that we believe in India. It's same thing I have experienced in South Africa. And one can launch products based on, let's say, language itself. In north of Africa, it's Arabic products. That does very well, as Rahul already mentioned, that, Z Aflam and Alwam. Those are the two Arabic channels that we have in north of Africa, which is all the 6 countries are Arabic speaking. Similarly, Anglophone Africa, English is the widely spoken language across whole of Africa. There are 44 countries wherein English is spoken, and we had launched Bollywood channel in English in Africa in 2015. And I must say that our product has done extremely well over there in last 5 years. We have been in many countries one among the top 3 most watched television channels. Similarly, there are 26 countries in Africa those speak French, which means when a product is launched in French language, it does extremely well, and we have launched a product in French language also across Francophone Africa. Similarly, there are a number of countries wherein Portuguese is spoken, and one could launch a product in Portuguese, which are known as Lusophone countries. One could do a lot across East Africa in Swahili. In West Africa, countries of Nigeria and Ghana, one could do a product in Hausa language. And all these are the practical products and launches I have already seen in last 7 years. One can also do a good tie-ups and partnerships depending on the stage of business. Most Indian businesses actually, make an initial entry in the continent to reach the South Asian diaspora, including the Indians who are living across the continent. That's just a early stage entry strategy one can follow, wherein we go there we launch the products and the channels in Hindi and in Tamil language with the subtitles in English or in French. It works very well. We ourselves at Z have launched these products 25 years back across African continent, and we have been leading that particular business vertical. However, when actually products are launched in the languages which are easy to understand in the countries, like in English and in French and in Portuguese or Swahili, then our business and the reach expands to the mainstream African people. So then we are not targeting 2 million South Asians who are actually living across Durban, but the reach actually is then becomes continent wide, wherein every English speaking person across the continent, which is 1 billion people, becomes your viewer, and you are able to broadcast your message to them. And I would say that Africa and South Africa has endless opportunities, with very high acceptance and relatively less competition. I would say cost of doing business in Africa is relatively lower than what we would actually spend in the developed world or the Western world, and the chances of success is much higher. I have seen it. It's not only Z, but I have also seen number of other Indian companies who have actually come here in the continent, and they have been, all of us have been doing quite successful business. At the same time, we have also been able to find the love in the heart and the living rooms of our viewers across Africa. As I mentioned earlier, we have been one among the top 3 players in countries like South Africa, Nigeria, Zambia, and Ivory Coast, Senegal, Gabon. One unique thing about the Indian television content is that it's a 3-generation safe content, wherein grandparents, parents, and grandchildren, all 3 generations can sit together and watch the content with absolute confidence that nothing that you don't want to see on the screen is actually will be shown. That's the strength and belief parents have in our content, and that has been another reason as to why Indian content has been so successful in the continent, and in more so in South Africa. With this, I will actually sum up my view by saying that I would encourage Indian businesses, Indian businessmen to come to South Africa, come to Africa, and see an early success. We have enough of success stories in the continent. We have enough of success stories in South Africa itself, and number of case studies have been there which are available to you to give you enough of confidence that this is the right place to actually do any launches. Whether we talk about what Mahatma Gandhi did, it originated from South Africa, and as I said earlier also, that love for Bollywood is universal, love for Indian content is universal. And we have actually I have myself led a success story within the media and entertainment space. Our High Commission in South Africa definitely has a lot of stats based on what they hear from the African mainstream viewers, and I am available. I look forward to interact more during the Q&A and during the coming months and years. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Thank you, Mr. Goel, for your presentations. A very business-like approach towards the world of media. You talked extensively about how Indian TV and Bollywood have penetrated into the African market. You talked of the need to have a differentiated approach given the very strong cultural resonance that exists between India and Africa. And I love the way you put it out about how you need to prepare for a product, research, to look at the specifics of that particular country or society, and then how you develop a product. And then at the end of the day, you gave out this very encouraging message of Africa and how there is very high level of acceptance, there is low level of competition, the costs are relatively low, and success is generally high. So thank you for that very encouraging note, which brings us to the end of the presentations by the panelists. But now we move on to the interactive section, and we have a number of questions that we can see already coming from different parts of the world. We shall first go to Oman, and a question from Susmita Gupta in Oman. Are you there? You could ask your question now.
Good evening, everyone. So we have seen that India's soft power has been mainly in the field of Bollywood, and the arc light is mainly on Bollywood, and then there has been cuisine and some forms of dances. And lately, Ayurveda and yoga has been presented beautifully and has caught the fancy of the world over. My question to you, sir, is there any particular aspect of India that you wish to focus on in the coming 2 years?
So would you like to take that question from Oman?
Thank you. I think, when it comes to soft power, it's usually an all of the above answer, because, you really don't segment life in different aspects of life. So, whether it is yoga, whether it's Ayurveda, or whether it's performing arts, or whether it's, or cultural traditions of various kinds. But perhaps the bit which gets left out in all of this is the fact that we are a democratic society and democratic polity, that, people of an enormous diversity have actually found a way of living together. And I mention that because in many parts of the world, this is still a journey which they have to advance further. Even in some parts where they have advanced, like, say, the West, it's a relatively recent happening. Pluralism is not that old a tradition in some, in these societies. It is very much deeper and older in ours. So my sense would be a kind of, the real soft power of India is the richness, the sort of the multifaceted nature of India in a way. And there is something in it which appeals to everybody, old or young, rich or poor. There is some part of India which resonates with people, and I think that's a good thing to promote at this time.
Thank you, sir, for that elaboration on soft power. We shall stay on in Oman, and we have Dr. Satish Nambiar, chairman of the Indian Social Club, who has a question.
India has supplied medicine to many countries during the pandemic. Now it is poised to play a major role in COVID vaccines, their development, and their distribution. Do you feel it has been adequately projected in the media? If not, what more could be done to highlight such positive stories about India?
Mr. Nambiar, you are right. During the last 1 year, we supplied medicines to more than 150 countries in the world, in particular hydroxychloroquine and paracetamol, which were in short supply due to the high demand. But today we are all focused on the vaccine development and vaccine production. No question, India will make a big difference there, because I think we will bring that kind of production capacities to bear, which the world needs. At the moment, there are 6 vaccines under trials at different stages. In India, some very far advanced, which may take a few weeks to start being used among people. Then each one is a little bit behind, but we are ourselves making a big contribution to the COVAX. There's a COVAX initiative which has a common pool of vaccines, but in many cases, countries are reaching out to us commercially through the governments, through foundations, NGOs, and our approach to vaccines would be similar to our approach to the medicines, which is that wherever we can help, we will help. Where people, in fact, find it difficult to access it, we will make that effort to make it available to them. Prime Minister Modi, in fact, when he addressed the UN General Assembly in September this year virtually, he did make this commitment that India will help to make vaccines affordable and accessible to all countries of the world. We certainly are planning for that. It'll be a complicated challenge, but I would say to some extent, there'll be a certain buzz about the vaccine till it actually comes on stream. When it comes on stream, yes, it would help us enormously if, wherever you live, in your case in Oman, if you help to put out the word. I mean, I think it's good for the country, it's good for the people. A lot of people would have worked on it. A lot of people's energies and efforts would have gone into having it sent out. It would be a nice way of appreciating it. So I think we would, at that stage, very much seek the support of people like you, your organizations, your networks in that endeavor.
Thank you, sir. We now move to Singapore, where we find a couple of questions coming from there. We first invite Manish Tripathi from the Singapore India Chamber of Commerce. Shri Manish Tripathi, please.
Namaskar, sir.
Singapore.
Namaskar, everybody. My greetings to Honorable Minister Dr. Jaishankar. Very warm greetings from Singapore, sir. We all, the Singapore diaspora, feels very happy when we hear you or see you, even digitally. So, from the side of Singapore, sir, we have a suggestion from the Chamber of Commerce. As the eminent panelists have mentioned, children and youth are a very important part. And we are not only celebrating India at 75, sir, but also the new India, the next generation of India should be celebrated. May we suggest, sir, that we aggregate 75 schools worldwide and in India. And I'm sure the Ministry of Education or the CBSE board will find out the schools. And if we can do a series, a build-up, in every school, there could be one event, India at 75. And we did a quick back-of-the-envelope calculation, sir. 2,000 students, each student having at least 4 or 5 family members. That's close to 1 million people celebrating. And that build-up would actually give a hook to the media, the local media, the blogs, the powerhouses, to further spread that out. So if we can get 75 schools celebrating, build this up to the last, and during the grand finale, there could be a small 15-minute clip covering every school's 5-10 seconds. It'll give a great tribute to the kids, and it'll get a big excitement wave going on, sir.
Very interesting suggestion. Let me pass it along and see what people have to say about it. But it's a very interesting suggestion.
Thank you, sir.
We have another question from Singapore. It's from Nomita Dhar in Singapore. Can we have Nomita Dhar for her question, please?
Excellency, good evening from Singapore. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I hope, sir, you remember me. I worked with you many years ago. What I would,
yes.
More than a question, the suggestion would be there are many non-Indians who are into performing arts or who follow arts, culture, if we can make a human chain across the globe where these people perform and celebrate the Indianness during our 75th year celebration, that would really create some kind of a very big buzz. And that would also not confine this whole exercise to Indians celebrating the Indians everywhere else, but of course celebrating with others who are stakeholders and who we want to engage for better business and prospects. So that is something I would encourage us to take up during 75th year of our celebration. And yeah, basically, this is what I feel. And as there are so many media professionals from all over the world trying to suggest, they also are trying to find out what is the ground reality and what is the need of that particular country. So we could have a unified program where all of us in different parts of the country have a centralized theme so that we don't compete but we collaborate with each other and provide something which is phenomenal that everybody is talking about India at 75. I think that would resonate well and that will give us more mileage in whatever money we are spending, whatever efforts we are making. That's all, sir. Nice to see you after many.
Nice to see you. Well, thank you. Nice to see you too. It's interesting. Your two suggestions are actually somewhat similar because what you are suggesting is really celebrate with India.
Yes.
Celebrate India at 75 with India. Don't only look at Pravasis, look at the world. Use the Pravasis as a bridge to the world. And I think the school's idea kind of is in the same sort of zone. So we'll certainly give it very serious thought because I think when we get down to the actual programming of India at 75, there are a lot of we're still at a stage where people are giving ideas. So I will certainly feed that in. And the idea again of a theme is something. Yes, sure.
So, the Indian heart of giving. For example, we go to India and you go to a egg vendor, you tell him, give me 10, 50 cents, 50 paisa less, he will give it to you. That kind of Indianness, the willingness to give, is the fabric and core of our Indian society. And rather than showing that, we have done this and that, if we are able to lead a campaign where we show the heart of an Indian, which has sustained everything that has happened to it over the years, and it's still giving. Even during COVID, I traveled back home in Air India. That is the only airlines I think it still has heart, during this difficult time where all airlines have collapsed. This is the only one which is still serving us. So those are the kind of stories and narratives.
I will pass that on to Mr. Hardeep Puri. The bit about Air India. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Singapore. That was actually an outstanding question about the heart of India and how the sense of giving is so intrinsic in our culture. We now move to London, where we have Ms. Neetu Singh, who wishes to ask a question. London, are you there? London, are you there? Well, it appears we are not connected with London at this moment. We have a question from Sri Lanka, Yalini Shanmugam. Yalini, would you wish to come in with your question from Sri Lanka? Sri Lanka, are you online? Yalini Shanmugam? No. Seemingly not. We have a question from UAE, Sajita Saswardhan. Is UAE online, Sajita Saswardhan? Right. Sajita has sent a question in the chat box, and I'll read it out for you. The External Affairs Minister spoke about 3 million Indian expats who have returned via the Vande Bharat mission. She would like to know the kind of steps that are being taken for their rehabilitation.
Many of them will actually be going back or have actually gone back. So it's not, this was a moment which happened when the pandemic was in full bloom, so to speak. But we should not take that as a permanent situation. We are recovering economically in India, and we have every confidence that the Gulf economies would also recover very strongly. So I think the focus today would be on facilitating the return of people back to the places where they had to leave. And when I was recently in Dubai and Abu Dhabi and Bahrain, a lot of my discussions with the authorities was really on many of them coming back.
Thank you, sir. Shall we try and get back to London? I'm told London is now online. Ms. Neetu Singh in London.
Then move on to somebody else. If they're not talking, they're not talking.
Try Sri Lanka.
No, London doesn't seem to be accessible at this point of time. Can we try Sri Lanka? Yalini Shanmugam, are you there? We're trying to get all our overseas questions through. Yalini Shanmugam in Sri Lanka?
Apparently not.
No. We have got on the chat box the question from Ms. Neetu Singh, which is again about soft power. I would be interested in hearing from the panelists how India should leverage its soft power on a global scale to influence media perceptions. This is something that the External Affairs Minister has already spoken about, but would somebody who's in the world of culture, Mr. K.V. Rao, wish to have a comment on that?
Thank you for directing that. As I mentioned in my brief remarks, there are two ways you relate with India. One, you relate at a mental level, and the other at an experience level of experiencing India. When foreigners come to India, they try to discover India but end up discovering themselves. And that's the magic of the Indianness. And I think in this, at 75, as I was saying, a target of at least touching the lives through an experience of Indianness to 10% of the world's population, we would have still made a great impact, because that is what is going to really make people really believe what is an India, what is all about Indianness. And that's resounded around this panel, and it's been used a few times. And I think we can do this more through really making people live that Indianness and experience it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rao, for your contribution to that. In the chat box, we've also received a question about, and this is something that Mr. Ladwa also mentioned about, that we do not have a globally recognized Indian media brand or TV channel. So what could be the template to create one? Can I request Mr. Manoj Ladwa to first pitch in on this? And then I would like Mr. Harish Goel also to add his comments, because both of you run media channels. Mr. Manoj Ladwa first.
Thank you very much for that, directing that question to me. And I've been listening intently to all the excellent suggestions that have come through. And I loved the phrase celebrate with India, and look forward to discussing and supporting that. Now, turning to the point about a global media platform, I don't think that there is, this is not about one organization or one channel. My suggestion or my view is that there is scope for multiple global channels and platforms that can present an India perspective, because the country is huge, the population is diverse across the world, and so it is across different platforms to create properties. Now, clearly, there is a role for the government of India in, I guess, a similar way in which the BBC is supported or other channels are supported. But I think a lot of the heavy lifting should be done by the private sector. And I also mentioned in my comments that there is a tremendous amount of scope for more collaboration between diaspora-based, diaspora-founded, and diaspora-involved media organizations around the world. So I guess this is a call to action or a reach out to my friends in the media around the world from diaspora backgrounds. So let's get together and let's look at ways in which we can create a much bigger impact together. Frankly, I don't think that any one channel or one organization will be able to do it on their own.
Thank you, Mr. Ladwa, for those observations. We'll now go to Mr. Harish Goel for a quick comment. You've had great success in launching a brand, a media channel across Africa. What would it take to have a global presence for an Indian media brand or TV channel? Mr. Harish Goel, please.
Thank you. So my view is slightly different. As I mentioned earlier during my 6 minutes of speaking, at Z itself, we operate in 173 countries. We reach 1.3 billion viewers across the globe, and we bring television channels not in one language, but a dozen of international languages. And I'm not talking only the Indian languages. Indian languages plus a dozen of international languages is wherein we have been taking the Bollywood television channels across the globe. And as I'm talking to you, I look after New Year 2021. I'm in the process of shifting to US. So, I mean, isn't it credible that while we have been talking about COVID challenges, a lot of challenges that people and businesses have faced last 9-10 months, but then I also it's a matter of looking at what side of coin one is looking. And I have seen the amount of new launches that I myself have done in last 9 months have been more than I could do it ever. I have done a new channel launch in Amharic language that actually reaches Ethiopian viewers in their own language. I have done a Tamil movie channel launch, Z Tharai. In Singapore, I have done Z Tamil channel launch in Malaysia. So there are it's not really that the Indian media houses are lacking behind anywhere. I would say it is more of probably making people aware as to what businesses have been doing. And I'm not representing right now Z Entertainment only. I am actually talking on behalf of the Indian television industry, and it's not only us. You name a number of Indian television channels and companies have actually really global presence. And when I say that 1.3 billion viewers, it's not really a small number. 173 countries is not small, and some of the countries we have been operating since 25 years. Most of the countries, in fact, we have been operating for more than 20 years. So I would say actually, we collectively need to just build on it and make the globe aware of what Indian businesses have been able to achieve and do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goel, for sharing your experiences on that. We were not able to reach Yalini Shanmugam on the video, but we have got on the chat box her question. Her question is, in the times of the COVID pandemic, vocal for local and Atmanirbhar Bharat seem to have caught the imagination of Indians. Global audiences still seem to have their doubts and misconceptions about it. Do you see a role for media in interpreting it to the global audience?
Very definitely, yes, because I think one is interpreting it and one is making sure you don't misinterpret it. I think both vocal for local and Atmanirbhar Bharat are really initiatives that are aimed at building our national capacities. And there is a context, because look, what was the big takeaway from the COVID experience? The big takeaway was that if we are all overly dependent on limited geography and a few production centers, if something, God forbid, goes wrong, the entire world is in trouble. So, I mean, like in any business, you would hedge risks. I think in the case of the world also, we have to de-risk the world. I mean, that is really the big lesson out of COVID. And to de-risk the world, more players need to bring more capabilities to the table. And certainly a country like India, which is the 5th largest economy in the world, it cannot, stay away from this challenge. Now, there will be people who would misinterpret it and portray it as protectionism, or somehow we are turning our back on globalization. That is simply not true. The whole idea is make more in India and make more for the world. I mean, that's really the message out there, and I very much hope that the media gets that more and that world part of that message right.
So thank you for your remarks on that last question. We don't have time for more, though there are a few more in the chat box. It's been a fascinating session with starting with the address given by the External Affairs Minister and the very, very useful remarks by the panelists who made several suggestions on how we can forge these partnerships as we move towards India at 75. I think there was great understanding and unanimity across the panelists that the diaspora matters. This was something that the External Affairs Minister also mentioned in his opening remarks. The fact that India is undergoing rapid transformation in recent years, and that this is a new India that is emerging. I think some of the panelists talked about how we need to target the audience, how we need to brand India, how we need to synergize the art and culture of India, our historical connections with various parts of the world, how we can build a viable media network or a media channel that can project to the world around us, the power of the youth to project new India. It's been a very fascinating session. Thank you for your contributions. I also wish to thank the participants who came in with their questions in the chat box. Thank you very much we now set the stage for the next round, which is the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas Convention on the 9th of January, with the inaugural session to be done by the Honorable Prime Minister, the valedictory address to be delivered by the Honorable Rashtrapati Ji, and in between we shall have 2 sessions on contributing to Atmanirbhar Bharat and post-COVID challenges. Thank you very much for being a part of this webinar on PBD Conference, Forging Partnerships in Media and Entertainment. Thank you very much.